Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in on another exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. For those of you joining us for the first time, of which there's quite a few of you today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And you are catching us on a special start to the week because we are live in one of my all-time personal favorite places. Now today, as you and your teachers will know, having signed up for our epic Losing Blue broadcast, we are going to talk together with the amazing folks at Banff National Park in Canada, one of the most special places, not just in Canada, but the whole world, and the National Film Board with their Losing Blue film. So I want to say, as a personal note, I had the chance to go out to Banff, and it was one of the most special places I've ever visited on planet Earth. And for me, the theme of today's talk is really important. We're going to learn a little bit more about it from Laurie in just a second. But having paddled on these lakes, on Lake Louise, on Moraine Lake in Alberta, it is the most unearthly, magical body of water you could ever imagine being on in your life. If you get the chance to leave this program and go straight there to go out and paddle or swim, it will actually transform your entire life. It's so much fun. So today we are going to learn from Laurie at Banff a little bit about what makes these lakes the special color they are, how climate change threatens them, and a little bit more live from the shores of Lake Louise. Laurie, welcome back to the broadcast in the coolest place of all time. Look at you.
Oh. Hello, bonjour. I don't know, Jesse, about swimming in this lake. It's very, very cold.
Maybe dip your hand in. But how cold is it there?
How cold is it? Well, can you see my breath this morning? There's little shards of ice on the lake where the water is very still right beside us. So it won't be very long before this freezes up.
That's where we'll sneak it. I'm glad we're sneaking in the tail end of fall before the snow settles there in the mountains, and I just couldn't be luckier for the day we have.
Look at this day. We've got a crystal clear, glassy, smooth lake. It's absolutely phenomenal out here right now. It's a little chilly. It's that frosty first few days of fall here. And like I say, the lake is going to be freezing up pretty soon. So we're lucky to get here.
It is so special, and I know our kids, like me, are really excited to hear all about why this is such a big topic for everyone today. What's the deal with Losing Blue? Tell us about these lakes. I'm going to zip it and turn it over to you. Thank you so much, and take us away.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. My name is Laurie, and I'm part of the Parks Canada team here in beautiful Banff National Park. Today, we will learn about glaciers, how they carve this beautiful landscape, and how they create the amazing color of blue that we see in places like Lake Louise. We are standing on the shore of Lake Louise. The Victoria Glacier is clinging to the side of Mount Victoria just behind me here. And maybe some of you have visited here before, so let me know in the chat if you have. Today, we know this place as one of the highlights within Banff National Park. This is the first national park in Canada and one of the parks that make up the UNESCO Rocky Mountain Parks World Heritage Site. This place is justifiably world famous and a bucket list destination for millions of visitors every year. But the roots of this place go far deeper. We acknowledge that Banff National Park is within the present-day territory of the Treaty 6, 7, and 8 First Nations, as well as the Métis homeland. The lands and waters of Banff have been used for millennia by Indigenous peoples for sustenance, ceremony, trade, and travel. We thank them for their continuous stewardship and for sharing the land with us. Now, people have inhabited these mountains for about 13,000 years, ever since the last major ice age melted away. Glaciers were the sculptors that carved the mountain landscape that we admire today. They also give us the brilliant blue lakes that people are irresistibly drawn to. Now, to understand how glaciers carve the landscape and make lakes beautiful, let's first answer the question, what is a glacier? Simply put, a glacier is a big mass of ice. But there's more to it than that. Glaciers don't just form anywhere. They usually happen on mountains. Mountains get a lot of snowfall. Why? Air scoops up moisture from the ocean and carries it up over the mountain ranges. As the air rises over the land, it cools, so it can't hold on to all that water anymore. When the air rises high enough, the temperature drops below the freezing point. All the water vapor starts to gather up and freeze into beautiful snowflakes. When you get enough snowflakes swirling through the air, they start to get heavy, and they begin to fall out of the sky onto the mountaintops. Here at Lake Louise, there's an average of 5 meters of snowfall each winter. That is enough snow to cover me 2.5 times if I was standing on top of my own shoulders. Now on the mountaintops, the snow can actually get even deeper. Now here's the other thing to understand about mountaintops. They are usually much colder all year round than the valleys around them. The snow that fell in the winter might not all melt away in the summer. It stays on the mountaintop and more snow falls on top. Winter after winter, when there's more snowfall than snow melt for many years in a row, we call that accumulation. The snow at the bottom of the pile becomes squished by the weight of all the snow on top of it. It changes shape from a delicate, frilly snowflake into a little pellet of ice. It gets pressed together with the other little bits of ice to make a huge mass of ice. Let's see what we've got here. That is how a glacier is born. If the weather trend is cold, then glaciers grow in mass and length. They collect more snow and make more ice. Accumulation. The opposite of accumulation is ablation. If the weather trend is warm, glaciers lose mass and length. They melt more snow and ice than they collect. We call that ablation. Now, sometimes you might hear that a glacier is retreating if it's melting away. The word retreating might make you think that the glacier is actually going back uphill. It's not. A glacier is always moving downhill, pulled by gravity. A retreating glacier is actually just melting away faster than it can move downhill. It's going through ablation. The ice moves like a slow motion river down the mountainside. It bends and cracks over bumps in the landscape. It crushes and grinds the rock beneath it to a fine powder. Now imagine this whole valley filled to the mountaintops with ice. That's what it was like here at the height of the last major ice age, about 20,000 years ago, before people inhabited these valleys. In some places, the ice was nearly 2 kilometers thick. Now remember, that enormous amount of ice was not sitting still. It was pulled downhill by gravity. It crushed and carved the rock below as millions of cubic meters of ice eroded and melted into millions of liters of water. The rivers that it formed eroded the rock even more. And over time, that 2 kilometer thickness of ice flowed and melted, bulldozed and carved until it made the wide U-shaped valley that I'm standing in today. Today, the Victoria Glacier, what we can see at the edge, is only about 100 meters thick. And Lake Louise is still experiencing the effects of this glacial activity. If you're close to the glacier, you can listen for the groans of the ice as the glacier inches towards the edge of the cliff. Sometimes you'll hear the thunderous crack and boom as ice falls off the Victoria Glacier into the valley below. And the glacier continues to melt. It continues to grind up the rock below into a fine powder. Now this is what we call rock flour. That's F-L-O-U-R, like the flour that we use for baking. This very fine rock flour gets washed out of the bottom of the glacier in meltwater. The meltwater collects in lakes where the larger sediments settle out, but the rock flour is so light that it just floats around in the water. Let's see what happens when rock flour mixes with our water. The magic that happens when the light hits the perfect amount of rock flour and water in glacial lakes is the subject of Leanne Allison's short film, Losing Blue. So, Jesse? Is Leanne here with us today? Or we have one of the, yes?
Leanne unfortunately did not get in. I don't know if she's having some tech troubles, but I will note, I'm going to pass along the Losing Blue film to all our classrooms. If you want to follow up with us, it's an amazing film. It's so neat. And again, the National Film Board, Leanne, Banff National Park team have more resources than you can shake a stick at to wrap up this broadcast. But I want to note, Laurie, I've never seen a rock flower demonstration in my whole life. Like, I've seen the lakes, but to see that live and how quickly that happens, it looks like Kool-Aid. Like, it's unreal that something can have that color out in nature. It's magical.
It's my special magic trick. I kind of magicked this up for our demonstration purposes here today.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But what's really cool is the way that the light interacts with the particles of rock flour. The rock flour is so fine that it gets suspended in the water column and just floats all up and down in the lake. It's like millions and millions of mirrors, tiny mirrors that are pinging that blue color, that blue wavelength of light back to our eyes. So it really does look like, Gatorade or something very, very bright blue.
I can say, having paddled in these lakes, that the feeling when you're actually in them, it's so different from paddling in anything else. I hope some of our classes have had the chance to be out in a canoe or a kayak in a river, lake, ocean, what have you. There's nothing like these lakes. When things are floating in them, if you have like a log or stick, it looks like it's suspended in space in a way that's really hard to explain or capture in a picture until you're actually there. And just the whole experience of it. These there's a reason that Moraine Lake, right down the road from Lake Louise, is like the iconic image of Canada. If you go to other airports around the world and they're like, what's Canada? It's the Banff National Park lakes, because they're so special. So thank you for giving us a little bit of a walkthrough on that. And again, I'll make sure all our classes have the Losing Blue film when they're done this and can check it out with their classrooms. But I know you have more to tell us, Laurie, so I'll leave it back to you, and then we'll dive in with a big long Q&A with all our groups.
All right. Thanks, Jesse. All right, to wrap up, mountains store massive amounts of water in the form of snow and ice and release it slowly when it's needed in the summer. It's sort of like having a piggy bank. So if you put more money into it than you spend, then you are saving money. And if you spend more than you save, eventually you run out of money. Glaciers in the Canadian Rockies are losing more ice than they're gaining each year. Already, about 300 glaciers have completely melted away between 1920 and 2005 in the mountain national parks. The loss of glaciers is going to have an impact on every community downstream from here. That includes several big cities across 3 provinces here in Alberta and in our neighbors, Saskatchewan and Manitoba, plus an enormous amount of agricultural land that feeds all of us. Glacial melt adds water to the rivers at the hottest and driest times of year. Our mountain parks are places where we preserve nature and protect glaciers. But even though we set aside these special places, they are still connected to the bigger systems that drive the water cycle and the climate. We know that the mountain tops are warming faster than other parts of the Earth. And some scientists believe that most of our glaciers will disappear by the year 2100. The United Nations has designated 2025 as the International Year of Glaciers Preservation. I encourage you all to learn more about the special events for this important year. And even though glaciers may be far from where you live, they have an important role to play by providing you with fresh water, food, healthy rivers, and beautiful places to visit like this. All right, Jesse, so I think we have some time for questions.
Amazing. Laurie, this is so much fun. And also, your mountain diagram is one of my very favorite things I've ever seen brought into a broadcast. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I made the slime myself. I was very proud of this.
Ooh. YouTubers, there's so many of you, so please do share questions in the chat. We're going to head to our live classes first. So our Jerusalem Elementary Schools, we're coming to you in a second. Mr. Bedard and your awesome virtual school who've been joining us all year long. I'm going to come to you first for questions, and take us away from the Alberta region with your kids that have been to Banff before. Hey, man.
Oh, thank you. So we're excited to be here. Thank you. It's a twofold question. Well, how long do you think it'll be until the glacier at Lake Louise will melt? And what can we do to prevent it? What can we as humans do to slow this down or prevent it?
Amazing.
Yeah. Excellent questions. Well, the prediction of many scientists is that by 2100, many of the glaciers in our mountain national parks will be gone, and that includes the one on Mount Victoria right here behind me. So it continues to lose not only the length of the glacier, but also the depth. So the overall mass of this glacier is decreasing year after year. And what we can do as humans, we need to pull together. We need to make a change, globally to reduce our carbon emissions, to slow climate change, and to protect these very special places where we still do have glaciers and wild space, to guard against the erosion of those important places for nature.
Yep. This is something that we've been covering all year long so far. We've done a bunch of Arctic and Antarctic broadcasts. Polar and ice stories in general are among the most popular things that we ever feature. And really, it is, it's a story that we keep coming back to. We all know the solutions at this point. Classrooms, you guys are the most educated group ever in history on climate change, its impacts, what we can do to help prevent it. So do that. Listen to what your teachers are telling you, do what your parents are doing. We're all doing our part, and it's been really heartening to see classrooms around the world take action on behalf of climate change in the last few years. So, Mr. Bedard, a perfect first question. We're going to head to Miss Overman's class. If you guys want to come on in, Oregon, Ohio, just flick on your mic and take us away with a question. Hey, guys, welcome in.
Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Go ahead. What's the biggest glacier?
Yeah, the biggest glacier on Earth, Laurie.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Yeah, what's the biggest glacier in the world?
Biggest glacier in the world? Well, I think, wouldn't that be the continental ice sheet in Antarctica?
I think so. I'm trying to look this up really rapidly, but I mean, Antarctica has more ice than anywhere else by a huge margin. So it will be in Antarctica. What specific glacier it is, I don't know. But again, you were talking earlier about the Ice Age and how much ice there was back in the day. And I mean, that level of ice still exists in Antarctica and to some degree in Greenland as well. Like, we still have places on this planet that have kilometers or miles thick ice year-round, which is wild. So
yes.
Nice. Sorry, frog in my throat. Miss Swagging's class, we're going to head to you guys next. Miss Overman, I'm going to try and find the specific glacier and put it in the chat for you guys in a second. But come on in at our other Jerusalem Elementary class.
At Avery.
Shout it out.
Do you see animals?
Ooh.
Do we see animals here in Banff National Park? Yes, we actually saw a mother moose and her calf. We were driving here from the town of Banff up to Lake Louise this morning, and they were just so beautiful in the fall foliage. They were right beside that beautiful wildlife fence that we have alongside the highway. So they were on the wildlife side, and we were on the highway side, which is great to see. So yes, we see animals here pretty frequently. I actually saw some elk in my yard last night in Banff. Oh yeah, it's elk rutting season, so they're everywhere right now in the valley bottoms.
Lucky you, Laurie. That sounds lovely. That's pretty special.
Yeah.
I would say the only bear I've ever seen in the world in the wild ever was like right about like a kilometer away from where Laurie is standing on the way out of Lake Louise. So
wow,
that's a pretty special spot. By the way, for the specific answer for biggest glacier in the world is the Lambert Glacier in East Antarctica. It's 50 miles wide, 250 miles long, and it's 8,200 feet deep. So it's large. It's a crazy glacier. That's a cool question. I never heard that before. So nice, guys.
Thanks for looking that up.
Thank you. Yeah, my pleasure. We're going to take some from YouTube now. Mr. Brisson's class, welcome in PEI, guys. They want to know, from Cam wants to know, how do trees grow in the rocks on the mountains? How does that even happen?
Yeah, the trees here have an amazing ability to find the tiniest little crack in the rock and get their roots wiggled right in there, and then they just hold on for dear life in those cracks in the rock. And after a while, soil does develop here. We don't have very much topsoil in the Canadian Rockies. It's not very deep, but yeah, trees are just really tough and really persistent here. The trees have a really short growing season, especially around here at Lake Louise. There's only about 3.5 months out of the year that they can really grow. So even some of the smaller trees behind me, like this little skinny, this is a subalpine fir here, that's probably a good 30, 40 years old, at least.
I love when we get to highlight this because we've been lucky enough to feature things from Lake Louise before. We've been live in Antarctica, and the moral of the story is life will find a way. Like if there's any toehold that life can get an anchor on, whether it's a tree or a lichen or a bush or whatever, there will be something green there. It's one of the miracles of the planet that is the case. But I love that question because it looks like a forbidding environment. You're by glaciers, you're high up in the mountains, it's cold in the winter. How do you survive? And the answer is life's pretty cool. Great question, guys. All right, we've got a sort of two-parter on YouTube before we go back to our live classes, Laurie.
Okay.
Mason wants to know how you find so much rock flour in the water, considering it's so small. And Miss Gilchrist's class wants to know, can you do your own glacier water experiment at home? Is there a way, like a special powder we can do? We're getting the inside skinny secrets here.
Okay. Right. So the way that we can collect a sample of rock flour is when, at this time of year, the lake level is dropping. So we don't have nearly as much meltwater coming in. It's getting colder. So the lake level is coming down a little bit. And although rock flour is very, very light and it tends to sort of float around in the water, it does eventually, because it is still little tiny bits of rock, right? Little bits of mineral, and it will eventually very slowly sediment out of that water. So when the lake level drops, we can go and collect a little sample of rock flour. But I have to tell you a secret, friends. I made a magic trick out of this. So I've actually used a little bit of skim milk powder and a type of food coloring that reacts with water to make this little magic trick happen for demonstration purposes only. If we were to scoop a little bit of the actual lake water out with the rock flour in, it's not enough depth to give us that brilliant blue that we see here. So I did have to make a bit of a magic trick today.
Well, we appreciate the magic trick. I'm sorry for mentioning it mid-broadcast, but I will note classrooms. Like, it's so unreal that that color is pretty much exactly what it looks like. Like, that's a really great magic trick. It's wild to see the lakes. I encourage you to look up. I'm going to put this again. Lake Louise in Banff National Park or Moraine Lake in the same park, both of which have pretty much spot on that color. So thanks for the question, guys. Skim milk powder, a little bit of blue food coloring, and you'll have yourself some magic lake water.
Yeah.
Laurie, let's head back to our live classes. Mr. Bedard's class, come on back in and take us away. Hey.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any bucket list hold on one second. Are there any bucket list glaciers that you haven't seen yet that you're on, that are on your list that you're worried about study? And
okay. I am not a glaciologist, but I have a bucket list for travel, certainly, and I would love to go see the glaciers in Greenland. I was fortunate enough to travel to Iceland and see the amazing glaciers there. We got to walk right alongside the Skaftafell Glacier, which is on the tallest mountain in Iceland, and it was spectacular. We walked the entire day just looking at that glacier and seeing the cracks, the crevasses and seracs that form on the ice as it bends and cracks over forms in the landscape. So yeah, I think going to Greenland and seeing the glaciers there would be my next bucket list item.
Sounds pretty cool. I know our students in Mr. Bedard's class, like, you guys can head to the national parks in Alberta and go out onto the glaciers. This is something that you have the capacity to do in Canada. It's probably the most accessible glacier field on Earth. And then Iceland, I've been on a glacier in Iceland as well. It's probably the second most. So if you get the chance to head and see a glacier in person, it's so much grander and more epic than any picture could ever do it justice. So take that opportunity. It's like magic that you can have in the natural world. And I love that question. Thanks, Mr. Bedard.
And here's a hot tip as well. Sorry, Jesse, I'll just interject here that when you do visit a glacier, be sure to take lots of warm layers and take a windbreaker, because when you are on a glacier, there's what we call a katabatic wind. It's a wind that's always there because you're standing on such a cold mass that it chills the air, it makes the air heavier and denser, and it pushes that air downhill. So even on a really hot summer day, if you go visit our most accessible glacier at the Columbia Icefield, that's the Athabasca Glacier, that glacier always has a super cold wind that will chill you to the bone if you are not well prepared. So don't go there in your shorts. Even if it's 30 degrees out, wear your long pants, put your windbreaker on, put your toque on, wear your gloves. You're going to want all of that when you're on that very cold ice.
I love the safety edition. We've actually done some amazing programs with you guys about safety in the national parks. And so I'm really glad we snuck that message in. And for our American friends, 30 degrees Celsius means about 86 Fahrenheit. So it's really hot. Still, wear thick layers. Make sure you're good. If it's 30 degrees Fahrenheit out on the glacier, probably don't go at all. Hang out at home. Be safe. We've got a great question from Liam online, and then I'm going to head to Miss Overman's class in just a second. Liam wants to know how many glaciers there are in all of Canada. Laurie, do you know this? This is a toughie.
I do not know that answer offhand. We might have to go to the Google for that one.
I will check that out and try and find an answer for us in the next few minutes. But Miss Overman's class, let's head back to you. Unmute your mic, and you are good to go. Hey, guys.
If all the glaciers melted, could they rebuild in the future?
Ooh.
Yeah. If all the glaciers melted, could they come back in the future? Yes. The amazing thing about the Earth is that we have cycles of climate. So we've had eras where there is lots of ice, like right here was under 2 kilometers of ice one time in history, but then it is now melted away and we just have the remnant glacier on Mount Victoria. But that's not to say that we couldn't come back to a period of ice and much colder temperatures on average here. So the climate is always kind of coming and going, warming and cooling, warming and cooling. The difference of these days is that we have been pumping a lot of carbon dioxide and methane into our system. It is a closed system here on Earth. So we are creating that greenhouse effect and warming our planet faster than ever in history than we've ever been able to figure out. You know, for the climate cycles, this one is a doozy. So we could go back to a cold cycle at some time in the future and rebuild those glaciers.
Yeah. I wanted to note, it's something that we've hardly ever brought up in our history as a broadcast, but twice in the Earth's history, we've basically been a snowball. So the entire planet has been covered in ice twice in the history of the Earth, way, way before people, in fact, before dinosaurs even existed. But the ice on this planet is very cyclical, and I'm really glad we got that note in. Again, the danger is that we're doing it really, really fast. We're warming it up, and it's causing a lot of these big challenges on planet Earth. I will say too, Laurie, looking up how many glaciers in Canada gives you wildly different answers. I've seen literally at the most 20,000, which seems a little much, and at the fewest 20, and that seems way too little.
That's honestly, way too little.
Yeah, these are what come up pretty rapidly. So I'm gonna keep trying to find an answer for you, but it's a lot. We have glaciers all over Canada's north, Alberta, British Columbia, within the mountain ranges. There's some really, really special landscapes there, and that's where we'll find a lot of our big ice fields. So cool question, a stumper. Laurie, we're going to head back to Miss Swangchu's class, and then, folks, time flies and you're having fun. So we are nearing the end of the broadcast, but I'll make sure you all have the resources to keep the learning going when this is all said and done. Miss Swangchu, come on back in, and you can wrap us up from there, guys.
Okay.
Have you ever seen a glacier move in real time?
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I was hiking not far from here. If we go to the back of the lake and just a little bit off to the right-hand side over there, there is a beautiful trail called the Plain of Six Glaciers hiking trail. And I have been sitting up there on a hot day, and there's lots of glaciers that are what we call hanging glaciers. And the ice is hanging over right at the edge of a cliff. And when that ice moves really slowly downhill all the time, sometimes the ice that's hanging over the edge will suddenly break off and thunder down into the valley below. And I was lucky enough to see one of those ice falls one day. So even though glaciers move super, super, super slowly, you can see the effect of that accumulated movement when that ice breaks off at the edge suddenly. And I was lucky enough to see that.
I love that you got that answer, and I thought for sure the answer is going to be no, and that is so, so special to see, especially in a place like that. We've heard about it in Greenland and Antarctica, where you've got the big ice sheet that overhangs the ocean, And
Yeah.
that landscape is one of the most dramatic in the world, where the ice does collapse off the edge, and it's actually quite a dangerous ecosystem to be in. But what a special thing on Plain of Six Glaciers. That is awesome, Laurie.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it calving at Perito Moreno too in Argentina. That's another overhang, like a glacier that overhangs the water, and it calves huge chunks of ice from time to time.
Amazing. Well, I want to harp on something with Plain of Six Glaciers for a minute, because I've hiked in Lake Louise before, and I want our students to know, like, it might look like you're in the middle of absolutely nowhere there, but if you do that hike, there's a tea house on that trail, is there not? Yes.
There is. It's a wonderful little tea house, best chocolate cake in the world. You've earned it. If you made it up there on your feet, you've earned it.
So classrooms, you can go, you can park at Lake Louise, you can see the amazing lodge they have, and you can hike, and you can go up into the mountains behind Laurie and go get some chocolate cake and some tea. It's really one of the most special things you can do in Canada in the national park system. So head up when you're done the program. Laurie, this has been so much fun. Is there any final message you want to share for our classrooms about Banff, about Lake Louise, anything to wrap us up with today before I bring in our classes to say thank you and farewell?
Well, I really want to encourage you all to watch Leanne Allison's beautiful poetic film, Losing Blue. It will give you an insight into what causes that color in the very special glacial lakes that we have here, and what we stand to lose if it goes away. If we lose our glaciers, you know, we're not only losing that ice, that source of water, the water that feeds our rivers when they're at their driest and hottest times of year, but we'll lose something spiritually as well, I think. You know, these beautiful places that draw us and that magical color in the water. So, yeah, do check out Losing Blue, and be sure to come and visit us here in the Mountain National Parks and see it for yourself. It's life-changing.
Laurie, I think I'm skipping my broadcast later, and I'm hopping on the first plane to come see you before the winter sets in. You've certainly inspired me. Thank you so much for this, as always. And as you well know, what we do to wrap up every program, I'm going to bring in our classes. So Mr. Bedard, Ms. Swankster, Ms. Overman, if you want to flick on your microphones, join me in saying thank you and farewell. It's been so fun having you all. Please do take the opportunity to check out the film later. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And
Don't
bye for
trip
now,
and don't
guys.
bite.
See y'all soon. Thank you.
Bye.